the 60-minute journey through human history. Before there were cities, before there were kings, before there were even words, there was us, just fragile beings, trembling beside the fire, staring into the darkness and wondering what waits beyond. Tonight, we will travel back 300,000 years, from the dawn of humankind to the world you live in today. This is the story of us, the first humans. It all began in Africa. Around 300,000 years ago, Homo sapiens, modern humans, appeared. We were not the strongest, not the fastest, but we had something different: curiosity. While other species adapted to nature, we began to change it. We learned to make fire. We learned to hunt together. And when we started painting on cave walls, we were no longer just surviving, we were remembering. When humans became farmers, for 95% of our history, we wandered, following the seasons, hunting, gathering. Then one day, we planted seeds. The agricultural revolution, the greatest turning point in human history. We tamed wheat, rice, and livestock. Tiny huts turned into villages. Villages became towns. And towns grew into the first cities: Uruk, Jericho, Çatalhöyük. But with harvest came ownership. With ownership came inequality. And with inequality came power. The first civilizations around 3000 BCE, humans built civilizations along rivers: the Nile, the Tigris, the Indus, the Yellow River. Each believed the gods stood on their side. Mesopotamia gave us writing, the first marks on clay. Egypt gave us pyramids and the idea of an immortal soul. Ancient China gave us dynasties that lasted for millennia. The Indus Valley built cities with drainage and planning long before Rome. But every civilization learned one truth: no power lasts forever. Empires and gods. The age of empires had begun. Assyria, Persia, Greece, Rome. One empire rose, another fell. But amidst blood and swords, humanity searched for meaning. Religion was born. Hinduism, Buddhism, Judaism, Christianity, Islam. They shaped our morality, our art, and our laws. Yet when faith turned into power, the world once again burned. Crusades, inquisitions, holy wars, fought in the name of God, but stained with human blood. Darkness and light. When Rome collapsed, people called it the Dark Ages. But even in the dark, light endured. In monasteries, monks copied ancient books by candlelight. In the East, the Islamic Golden Age gave birth to algebra, astronomy, and medicine. Then came the Renaissance. Humanity looked up at the stars and said, "Perhaps we are not the center of the universe." Michelangelo carved divinity into stone. Da Vinci painted dreams that could fly. Explorers set sail, searching the world for gold, for glory, and for endless curiosity. The age of revolutions: gunpowder, printing presses, telescopes. And one question echoed through the world: what if the world could change? The Enlightenment brought reason. The American and French revolutions brought liberty. The Industrial Revolution brought machines. And with them, cities covered in smoke. But beneath the roar of engines, humanity realized we had conquered nature, but not ourselves. War and peace. The 20th century, our most glorious and most tragic age. 2 world wars, mushroom clouds tearing the sky. And then we set foot on the moon. Empires crumbled. New nations were born. Technology connected us, yet divided us more than ever. Human history became global and fragile like a single thread of light. The future of us. So what about the future? We are decoding DNA, building artificial intelligence, and turning our eyes toward the stars. But the question remains the same: who are we? Because history isn't just a story of what has happened, but a reminder of what we might become. I am the Untold History Hub, and this is the story of us, a species that never stopped dreaming. Chapter 1, The First Humans, Minute 3 to 10. 1. Overview of the idea. This segment serves as the gateway to the 60-minute journey through human history. It not only introduces our biological origins, Homo sapiens emerging in Africa about 300,000 years ago, but also subtly awakens a central theme. Open quote, "What makes humans special is not strength, but imagination and memory." Close quote. This is the philosophical foundation of the series. Humanity is not the strongest species, but the one capable of storytelling, imagination, and creation, the seeds of culture, religion, law, art, and science that will later shape civilization. The line, "we no longer just survived, we began to remember," marks the shift from instinct to consciousness, from an animal that lives to a being that thinks. 2. Historical context. The prehistoric era. This part takes place during the Paleolithic Age, around 300,000 to 10,000 BCE. Humans lived as nomads, moving with the seasons and the food supply. Tools were primitive: stone, wood, and bone. At this stage, survival was everything. Yet within that struggle, Homo sapiens developed two crucial abilities. Early language, basic communication through sound, gestures, and symbols, allowing group coordination and knowledge sharing. Abstract thinking, the ability to imagine and convey concepts that didn't exist physically, like spirit, future, or meaning. This was the birth of culture and religion. The cave paintings of Lascaux, France, and Altamira, Spain, stand as the earliest evidence that humans began to tell stories about their world. 3. Main message: curiosity and memory. We were not the strongest, not the fastest, but we had something different: curiosity. This is the central declaration of the chapter. Curiosity was not just an instinct for survival, it was the engine of intellectual evolution. Because of curiosity, humans saw fire, and instead of fleeing, approached it, looked at the stars and wondered, asked questions about life, death, and meaning. Among millions of species, only Homo sapiens asked, why? That single question defines the boundary between biological and intellectual humanity. We no longer just survived, we began to remember. This is one of the most powerful lines in the entire script. Remembering carries 3 layers of meaning. 1. Visual memory, cave paintings as a way to record the world. 2. Collective memory, oral traditions, myths, and rituals. 3. Spiritual memory, awareness that one's existence carries meaning beyond instinct. When humans began to remember, they created history, turning time from mere repetition into a story with a beginning, middle, and end. 4. Sound and effects analysis. Sound design, open quote, effects, wind in a cave, crackling fire, distant laughter, close quote. These are not mere technical notes, but emotional language. Wind in a cave evokes the vastness and solitude of prehistory, nature as both cradle and threat. Crackling fire symbolizes the first human invention, warmth, safety, and the light of knowledge. Distant laughter, subtle yet profound, the sound of community, the first spark of culture and human connection. Together, they form a sonic philosophy. Open quote, from the loneliness of the wind to the unity of laughter, humanity began to become human. Narrative technique. The narration adopts an epic and poetic tone, slow, contemplative, and immersive. The storyteller is not a scientist, but a sage, standing between past and present, guiding the audience through the dawn of time. Key techniques: macro-minimalism, condensing 300,000 years into a few symbolic lines. Rhythmic repetition, we learned, like a heartbeat of awakening humanity. Motion from darkness to light, from trembling by the fire to remembering, symbolizing the birth of consciousness. Voiceover suggestion, warm, deep, steady pacing. Emphasize the words curiosity, change, and remember, the 3 thematic pillars. 6. Philosophical and symbolic connections. This passage resonates on multiple levels. Existential philosophy, humanity's awareness of existence amid a vast, indifferent universe. Anthropology, the divergence of Homo sapiens from other species like Neanderthals. Mythology, the fire motif, Prometheus, Maori fire gods, etc., the forbidden symbol of enlightenment. Evolutionary psychology, curiosity as the foundation for learning, innovation, and imagination. Ultimately, this chapter declares, open quote, we were not born to be stronger, but to understand deeper, close quote. 7. Role in the 1-hour documentary. Within the full 60-minute structure, Chapter 1, Minute 310, serves as the opening gateway to the human story. It fulfills 4 major roles. 1. Establishes the core theme, humanity as a curious, creative storyteller. 2. Creates emotional connection, awakening the shared feeling of awe before the unknown. 3. Builds an epic, mystical atmosphere, balancing science and poetry. 4. Prepares the narrative transition from hunter-gatherers to farmers, the agricultural revolution. Chapter 8 Conclusion, the dawn of memory. The first humans is not just a tale of distant ancestors, it's a mirror held up to us today. It asks, open quote, are we still as curious as our ancestors once were? Close quote. In a world filled with technology, we continue the same quest, to remember, to learn, to find meaning. Because humanity is not merely a product of evolution, but the only species that knows it exists and tells stories about it. One overview of the idea. Chapter 2 marks a revolutionary turning point in human history, the moment when humanity abandoned its hunter-gatherer lifestyle of hundreds of thousands of years to become the first farmers. This was not merely a change in tools or livelihood, but a cognitive revolution, one that transformed how humans perceived the world, society, and themselves. The opening line, "For 95% of history, we wandered across the land," presents a humbling truth. For most of human existence, there were no palaces or empires, only small groups roaming vast landscapes. Yet, with a single act, the sowing of a seed, humanity opened a new era, the age of stability, settlement, and organized society. One day, we planted a seed. That was not just the day we grew plants, it was the day we planted civilization. 2. Historical context, the agricultural revolution. Around 10,000 BCE, in the Fertile Crescent of the Middle East, humans discovered that seeds could sprout again. They no longer relied solely on gathering or hunting, they began to control nature, an idea that changed everything. From random experimentation, people learned how to plant, irrigate, and store food. At the same time, animal domestication began. Dogs, sheep, goats, cattle, and later, horses. This change brought a steady food supply, allowing humans to live longer in larger groups and stop constant migration. Settlement triggered a chain of consequences: rapid population growth, surplus food, emergence of specialized professions, expanding communities, formation of rules, beliefs, and social order. The agricultural revolution was therefore not just a technological step forward, it was the foundation of all civilizations to come. 3. Philosophical significance, from freedom to ownership. The passage states, "But with the harvest came ownership. With ownership came inequality, and with inequality came power." The author is not simply describing an economic process, but outlining the first philosophical chain of causality in human society. Ownership. As humans cultivated the land, they began to belong to a place. For the first time, the concept of mine appeared, a boundary between individuals. Inequality. Some had more land, more food, more animals. Power. Those who held power not only controlled material wealth, but also created belief systems, laws, and religions to justify their dominance. In short, agriculture gave birth to power, and power gave birth to history. From here emerged kings, classes, wars, and states. 4. Symbolism and imagery in the narration. The narration uses simple yet symbolic language. Small huts became villages, villages became towns, and towns became the first cities: Uruk, Jericho, Çatalhöyük. These 3 places are not random. Uruk, Mesopotamia, birthplace of writing, symbol of social organization. Jericho, Canaan, one of the oldest walled cities, symbol of protection and ownership. Çatalhöyük, Anatolia, a densely connected settlement, symbol of early communal life. Thus, the passage carries both historical accuracy and metaphorical meaning, an evolution from solitary shelters to complex cities, showing humanity gradually building a social body. 5. Music and rhythm, the heartbeat of civilization. Sound direction. Soft music fades in steady drums, representing the heartbeat of a new civilization. A small but powerful artistic choice. As humanity shifted from hunting to farming, the world became more rhythmic and predictable: seasons, days, cycles of sowing and harvesting. The steady drumbeat symbolizes stability. The soft music mirrors the slowing pace of settled life. From an auditory perspective, this represents the emergence of the heartbeat of civilization, a collective rhythm uniting people through labor and ritual. 6. Shift in human perception, man and nature. Before the agricultural revolution, humans depended entirely on nature. Afterward, they began to control it. But this control also created tension. Farming required clearing forests, redirecting rivers, and altering the land, the beginning of human environmental impact. Humans became the second creator, after nature itself. Anthropologists call this the curse of agriculture. More food, but harder labor. More people, but faster spread of disease. More stability, but also more conflict over land. Life grew more complex, the price of civilization. Storytelling style. The narration of this chapter differs sharply from Chapter 1. While Chapter 1 had a mythical and sacred tone, Chapter 2 feels calmer and more grounded. Short, rhythmic sentences. We planted, we tamed, we built, mirror the labor rhythm of early farmers. This pacing helps the audience feel the slow, inevitable growth of human progress, like crops rising with the seasons. 8. Philosophical anthropological connections. The agricultural revolution can be understood on multiple levels. Sociological, the beginning of social structures, gender roles, ownership, and hierarchy. Religious, emergence of earth gods, grain mothers, and fertility goddesses, symbols of reverence for nature's cycles. Philosophical, stability created collective memory, moral systems, and ethics, the seeds of social consciousness. Psychological, for the first time, humans felt loss, because possession meant the risk of losing. Thus, planting a seed became not only an act of farming, but a metaphor for the birth of the human ego, the awareness of self, possession, and desire. 9-9, role in the 1-hour documentary. Within the 60-minute structure, this chapter acts as the bridge between nature and society, survival and organization. It transitions the story from wild humanity to social humanity, preparing for the dawn of civilization in the next chapter. Its 3 key narrative roles. 1, the beginning of organized society. 2, the origin of power and inequality. 3, the foundation of civilization, settlement, language, religion, and law. 10. Conclusion, the heartbeat of civilization. Chapter 2 closes with a symbolic image, a steady drumbeat representing the heartbeat of a new civilization. This is the moment humanity began to live together, to share labor, faith, and conflict. From the first seed, we grew not only wheat, but our own future. Therefore, Chapter 2 is not just about agriculture, it is about the birth of order, where nature yielded to human will. And with that steady rhythm, the heartbeat of the first civilization began to echo across time. Chapter 3, The First Civilizations, minutes 18 to 28. Around 3000 BCE, humanity witnessed the dawn of the first civilizations rising along the world's great rivers, the Nile, the Tigris and Euphrates, the Indus, and the Yellow River. Each civilization believed that the gods favored their land, granting them divine right and eternal order. Yet beneath this belief lay a shared truth: no power endures forever. The birth of civilizations. Rivers as the cradle of humanity. Rivers were the lifeblood of early civilization. The annual floods of the Nile, the fertile silt of Mesopotamia, the seasonal rhythms of the Indus, and the unpredictable flow of the Yellow River all shaped how humans lived, thought, and built their worlds. For the first time, nature did not merely dictate survival. It inspired architecture, law, religion, and social hierarchy. Settlements evolved into cities, and cities into kingdoms. Humanity had taken its first steps toward organized civilization, a world of writing, monuments, and belief systems. 2. Mesopotamia, the land between 2 rivers. In the fertile plains between the Tigris and Euphrates, Mesopotamia birthed some of the world's greatest innovations. Here emerged the Sumerians, creators of cuneiform writing, wedge-shaped marks pressed into clay tablets. This invention was not merely a method of record-keeping, but a revolution of the human mind. Through writing, memory became permanent, and power could be administered across generations. The Sumerians built ziggurats, temple towers reaching toward the heavens, symbolic of humanity's ambition to connect earth and sky. But as city-states like Uruk and Ur competed for dominance, wars and empires rose and fell. Mesopotamia became the first mirror reflecting a timeless truth: civilization thrives on both creation and conflict. Egypt, the kingdom of eternity. Along the Nile, another miracle unfolded. Every year, its predictable floods renewed the soil, allowing Egypt to flourish in stability. From this stability came a belief in eternity. The pharaoh was not just a ruler, but a god on earth, the bridge between the mortal and the divine. The pyramids of Giza, monumental in scale, symbolized not only engineering genius, but also humanity's yearning for immortality. For the Egyptians, life was merely the first chapter. The true journey began after death. Through their temples, tombs, and hieroglyphs, Egypt left behind a message carved in stone. Civilizations are built not only on power, but on belief in something beyond the self. 4. Indus Valley, the silent civilization. To the east, in what is now Pakistan and northwest India, thrived the Indus Valley civilization, centered around cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro. They built carefully planned cities, straight streets, and sophisticated drainage systems long before Rome or Athens existed. Yet, mysteriously, the Indus people left no deciphered writing, and their rulers remain unknown. Their civilization was quiet, efficient, orderly, and without grand monuments of ego. Some scholars suggest that this very modesty made their society remarkably egalitarian and sustainable for centuries. Their disappearance remains one of history's great mysteries, perhaps undone by climate change, river shifts, or internal decline, a reminder that even the most advanced systems can vanish without leaving a trace. 5. Ancient China, the Mandate of Heaven. In the valleys of the Yellow River, Huanghe, another civilization took root, ancient China. Its floods were unpredictable and often destructive, earning it the name China's Sorrow. But from chaos emerged order. The earliest dynasties, Xia, Shang, and Zhou, developed writing, bronze casting, and the concept of the Mandate of Heaven. Open quote, "A ruler governs by virtue, not by blood. When he loses virtue, heaven withdraws its favor." Close quote. This philosophy shaped Chinese history for thousands of years, intertwining morality and politics. Unlike the cyclical fall of other civilizations, China built continuity. Dynasties rose and fell, but the cultural essence endured. 6. The common thread: order, faith, and fragility. Though separated by distance, all these civilizations shared three core principles. Order, the organization of society through laws, agriculture, and hierarchy. Faith, the belief that gods, nature, or cosmic forces govern their fate. Fragility, the silent truth that even the mightiest empires are temporary. Floods, droughts, wars, and internal corruption could undo centuries of progress. In this way, the rivers that gave life could also take it away. 7. Philosophical insight: the rise and fall as a cycle. Every civilization believed it was eternal, yet history tells another story. Power, once concentrated, eventually dissolves. Monuments crumble, languages fade. What remains is not the empire itself, but the idea it leaves behind. Mesopotamia gave humanity writing, the tool of memory. Egypt gave us the notion of eternity. China gave moral governance. The Indus Valley taught the value of order and simplicity. Together, they formed the blueprint for all civilizations to come. 8. Symbolic ending: the fragile flame. The chapter closes with a reflection. Open quote, "Each civilization was a flame, bright, sacred, and short-lived. But from their ashes, new worlds would rise." Close quote. The narrator's tone slows, accompanied by soft ambient music and the sound of flowing water, the eternal rhythm of the rivers that began it all. The imagery fades between ancient ruins and modern cities, suggesting continuity between past and present. Because even now, every city, every empire, and every human achievement is still, in essence, a reflection of that first spark ignited beside the rivers. In summary, Chapter 3 serves as the heart of the one-hour film, the bridge between the agricultural revolution and the birth of complex societies. It shows how humanity learned to organize, believe, and build, but also how power's impermanence is the great lesson of history. From the moment we built our first city walls, we also began writing the story of their eventual fall. Detailed Analysis, Chapter 4, Empires and Gods, Minute 2838, approxa 1,000 words. The Age of Power and Faith. After the birth of the first civilizations, humanity entered a new and defining era, the Age of Empires. If Chapter 3 was about rivers nurturing civilization, Chapter 4 is about blood and belief, a time when humankind sought not only to rule the world, but to understand its meaning. The opening lines set the tone. Open quote, "The Age of Empires began, Assyria, Persia, Greece, Rome." Close quote. With just 4 sentences, human history leaps from villages and cities to global dominions, where millions of people lived under a single power. But empire was never just about territory. It was the expansion of ideas, religions, and cultures, marking the moment when humans began to see themselves as part of a shared destiny. The structure of empire. Blood, law, and myth. An empire is not built only on swords and stone, but on belief and order. It survives as long as millions believe they belong to the same imagined system. Assyria, the empire of fear. Assyria, 9th to 7th centuries BCE, was the first empire to rule through systematic terror. Bas-reliefs from Nineveh depict prisoners being executed, cities burning, a clear political message: resistance is futile. Fear forged unity, but it was also a poison. The same terror that created obedience eventually provoked rebellion. Assyria's collapse was as swift as its rise, proof that raw power alone cannot sustain an empire without moral cohesion. Persia, the empire of tolerance. After Assyria came Persia, 6th century BCE, founded by Cyrus the Great, who proposed a different vision: rule through tolerance and law. Cyrus allowed conquered peoples to keep their own religions, languages, and traditions, a radical notion for its time. The Cyrus Cylinder, often called the world's first charter of human rights, embodied this spirit. Because of that, Persia endured far longer, laying the groundwork for the concept of unity through diversity, an idea still vital today. Greece, the empire of thought. The Greeks, though politically divided, created another kind of empire, an empire of reason. From Athens to Sparta, hundreds of city-states showed that true power could come from ideas rather than armies. Through Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, they questioned everything: justice, virtue, the soul, and even the nature of existence. For the first time, humanity dared to seek truth not through divine command, but through reason. Rome, the empire of order. Rome inherited everything and turned it into a system. From its legal codes to its roads and legions, everything served the pursuit of stability and control. But beneath that order lay a moral question. Open quote, "How can an empire rule the world without losing its soul?" Close quote. As Rome conquered lands, it was conquered in return, not by armies, but by faith, through a new religion called Christianity. The birth of religion, seeking meaning in chaos. Open quote, "But amid blood and swords, mankind searched for meaning. Religion was born." Close quote. Religion emerged not merely to explain creation, but to soothe the suffering caused by human hands. As empires expanded, bringing war, slavery, and inequality, people sought higher meaning to justify or transcend their pain. Thus, religion became humanity's universal language, a bridge between fear and hope, mortality and eternity. 4. 5 great religions, 5 ways to see the world. Hinduism. Born in the Indian subcontinent, it is the oldest surviving polytheistic religion. It teaches that the universe moves through karma, action, and samsara, rebirth, and that ultimate liberation, moksha, comes when the self unites with the cosmic soul. It offers acceptance of life's imperfection and the harmony of all beings. Buddhism. Emerging from the same soil, Buddhism was a quiet rebellion against social hierarchy. The Buddha taught that suffering arises from desire, anger, and ignorance, and the path to freedom is mindfulness and compassion. It does not promise power or paradise. It is a revolution of inner awareness. Judaism, the first monotheistic faith in history. It established the idea of a covenant between God and his people, Israel, where morality became the bridge between the divine and the human. From this belief came the concept of a God with will and purpose, and humanity as his chosen partner. Christianity. Born within the Roman Empire, Christianity spread with the message of love and salvation. The crucifixion of Jesus became the ultimate symbol of forgiveness and sacrifice. Yet when Christianity became Rome's state religion, faith and power began to merge, and from that union came both compassion and conquest, Islam. Emerging in 7th century Arabia, Islam preached unity and discipline. All people are equal before Allah, and the Sharia law was not only spiritual but a code of governance. Fueled by conviction and structure, Islam rapidly spread across the Middle East, North Africa, and parts of Europe. 5. When faith becomes power. Open quote, "But when faith became power, the world caught fire." Close quote. Religion, once meant to heal, became a tool for domination. When people believed they held absolute truth, they began to silence others. From the Crusades in Europe to heresy hunts and religious wars, humanity entered an age when God's name was used to justify bloodshed. Faith and politics fused into theocracy, and with it came the darkest paradox of all. Open quote. When man claims to act for God, he forgets he is still only human. Close quote. 6. A philosophical reflection, power versus belief. Chapter 4 poses a timeless question. Open quote, which is stronger, the sword or the spirit? Close quote. The sword conquers lands, faith conquers minds, but when faith is wielded like a sword, it destroys both. History of empires is a cycle of rise and collapse, while the history of religions is a cycle of enlightenment and extremism. When these cycles overlap, the result is the endless struggle between truth and domination. 7. Storytelling and sound design, from glory to tragedy. In cinematic form, this chapter shifts sharply in tone and rhythm. Drums roll as empires rise, choirs swell as religions awaken, then the music slows, darkens as blood is spilled in God's name. The pacing mirrors the rhythm of history itself: ascension, brilliance, and downfall. The narrator's voice grows solemn near the end, almost mournful, reflecting on humanity's long pattern of repeating its own mistakes. Conclusion: The lesson of an age. Chapter 4 closes not with triumph, but with realization. Open quote, "In the name of God, but drenched in human blood." Close quote. The final line cuts through history like a blade, reminding us that no empire lasts forever, and that faith only redeems when it leads to compassion, not control. Humanity begins to understand that true strength lies not in conquest or dogma, but in the courage to look inward and recognize our shared fragility. Summary: Chapter 4 is a symphony of power and spirit, of blood and prayer. It reveals that humans build not only empires on earth, but empires within the mind. And when power consumes the soul, history teaches a hard truth. Every holy empire turns to dust, but the lessons of empathy endure forever. Detailed analysis, Chapter 5, Darkness and Light, minutes 38 to 45, approx 1,000 words. 1. Introduction. When an empire falls, an era begins. When the Roman Empire collapsed in the 5th century AD, Western Europe plunged into centuries of chaos. Cities crumbled, trade vanished, and knowledge faded. Historians call this the Dark Ages, a term evoking ignorance, superstition, and endless war. But history is never one-dimensional. Even in the shadows of iron and blood, there remained a spark of knowledge, faith, and creativity. This chapter marks the transition between destruction and rebirth, between blind faith and enlightened reason, the moment humanity began to rediscover itself. 2. In the darkness, the guardians of knowledge. Open quote. In monasteries, monks copied ancient books. Close quote. As the great Roman cities decayed, monasteries became the final sanctuaries of European knowledge. Amid candlelight and church bells, Benedictine monks painstakingly copied the works of the ancients: Plato, Aristotle, Galen, Cicero. Through their quiet devotion, they preserved the memory of humanity while the world outside burned with war and plague. Each manuscript, written with black ink on parchment, was a bridge between past and future. Without these monks, the entire body of classical wisdom might have vanished with the empire. Thus, even in darkness, there burned a silent light, not brilliant but enduring, like an oil lamp flickering through a long night. The Eastern Light, the Islamic Golden Age. Open quote, in the East, the Islamic Golden Age gave birth to algebra, astronomy, and medicine. Close quote. While Europe languished, Baghdad, Cairo, and Cordoba flourished. From the 8th to the 13th century, the Islamic Golden Age transformed human thought and science. In the House of Wisdom, Bait al-Hikmah in Baghdad, scholars translated thousands of Greek, Persian, and Indian manuscripts into Arabic, preserving and expanding upon ancient knowledge. Among these thinkers were Al-Khwarizmi, the father of algebra, al-Jabr. The word algorithm originates from his name. Ibn Sina, Avicenna, author of the Canon of Medicine, the cornerstone of medical study in Europe for 500 years. Al-Hazan, Ibn al-Haytham, pioneer of optics, who proved that light enters the eyes rather than emanating from them. Omar Khayyam, poet and mathematician who refined cubic equations and created a more accurate calendar than the Julian one. These ideas traveled back to Europe through Spain and Sicily, igniting the early sparks of the Renaissance. In truth, the light of knowledge never died. It merely shifted from one civilization to another, waiting to be rediscovered. 4. The Renaissance, when humanity looked upward. Open quote, and then the Renaissance came. Humanity looked to the sky and said, perhaps we are not the center of the universe. Close quote. Between the 14th and 16th centuries, Europe experienced a rebirth. From the ashes of plague and war, a world of art, science, and reason arose. In Florence, Venice, and Rome, patrons like the Medici family sponsored artists, architects, and thinkers, ushering in the Renaissance, literally the rebirth. For the first time in centuries, people began to see the world not through the lens of faith, but through reason and beauty. The phrase, perhaps we are not the center of the universe, echoes Copernicus's revolution, the revelation that the Earth orbits the sun. This was a monumental shift in philosophy. Humanity was no longer the center of creation, but through that realization, it became freer than ever before. 5. Art, humanity recreates the divine. Open quote, Michelangelo carved the divine into stone. Da Vinci painted dreams that could fly. Close quote. Michelangelo, through David in the Sistine Chapel ceiling, did not just sculpt gods, he made humans godlike. The anatomy, emotion, and light of his figures transformed art from worship to a celebration of humanity. Meanwhile, Leonardo da Vinci, painter, scientist, engineer, and philosopher, embodied the Renaissance spirit. He painted Mona Lisa, The Last Supper, and drew flying machines, tanks, and robots centuries ahead of his time. He believed that knowledge and imagination together could unlock all mysteries. These geniuses represented the union of art and science, faith and logic, the perfect balance of light returning after a millennium of shadow. 6. The Age of Discovery. Endless curiosity, open quote. Explorers set sail to find the world, for gold, for glory, and for boundless curiosity, close quote. The 15th century opened the Age of Discovery. Figures like Columbus, Magellan, and Vasco da Gama set sail into the unknown, rewriting the map of the world. Their motives, gold and glory, were often selfish, yet behind them burned something deeper. The eternal human curiosity. It was the same instinct that drove our ancestors to leave Africa tens of thousands of years ago. These voyages brought both light and shadow, the light of connection, cultural exchange, and the expansion of human understanding. The shadow of colonization, slavery, and the destruction of native civilizations. History is never purely heroic or tragic. It is a complex journey between wisdom and desire, between progress and loss. 7. Darkness and light, a philosophical symbol. The title, Darkness and Light, goes beyond historical description. It serves as a metaphor for the human condition. Darkness stands for collapse, fear, and ignorance. Light represents knowledge, creativity, and reason. But light only gains meaning after one has known the dark. Without centuries of decline, humanity might never have hungered for rediscovery. The Renaissance was not merely a revival of learning. It was a spiritual awakening of mankind. 8. Conclusion. Light never dies. The chapter closes with the image of a human looking up to the heavens, a simple yet profound act. After centuries of fear and submission, humanity dared to ask, open quote, who are we in this vast universe? Close quote. That question became the foundation of modern science, philosophy, and humanism. Darkness and light are not opposites, they coexist, for only in the night do we learn to kindle our own flame. Summary. Chapter 5 captures humanity's great transformation, from ruins to rebirth, from fear to curiosity. It reminds us that even when civilizations fall, the flame of knowledge never truly dies. And it is this faith in reason, in the enduring light of the human spirit, that carried us forward, toward the Age of Enlightenment. Detailed analysis. Chapter 6, The Age of Revolutions, minute 45 to 52, approx 1,000 words. 1. Overview. The era when humanity awoke. Chapter 6 marks one of the most profound and transformative periods in human history, the Age of Revolutions. These were not merely revolts on the battlefield, but revolutions of the mind, of science, and of the human spirit. From the 15th to the 19th century, humanity entered an age of continuous upheaval. The scientific revolution, the Enlightenment, the political revolutions, and the industrial revolution. These three pillars, reason, liberty, and technology, became the foundation of the modern world. The question that echoes at the beginning, what if the world could change, is the spark that ignited every transformation that followed. From this moment onward, humanity did not merely believe. It began to question, discover, and create. 2. The scientific revolution, when reason awakened the universe. Open quote, guns, the printing press, the telescope, and one question arose. Close quote. These three inventions symbolize the growing power of human intellect. Gunpowder transformed warfare into technology, proof that knowledge could reshape power. The printing press, Gutenberg 1450, democratized knowledge, making books accessible beyond priests and nobles. The telescope, Galileo 1609, opened the heavens, forcing humankind to reconsider its place in the vast cosmos. From Copernicus and Kepler to Galileo and Newton, scientists shattered the boundaries of dogma and replaced blind faith with empirical truth. The question, what if the world could change, became the rallying cry of an intellectual awakening, reason replacing revelation, experiment replacing belief. 3. The Age of Enlightenment, the light of reason. Open quote, the Enlightenment brought reason. Close quote. From the 17th to 18th centuries, Europe entered the Enlightenment, an era where thinkers believed that the human mind could illuminate every mystery of existence. Philosophers such as John Locke, Voltaire, Rousseau, Montesquieu, and Kant laid the foundations for democracy, liberty, and human rights. They dared to ask not only, does God exist, but something far deeper. Open quote, if he does not, how shall we build morality and society ourselves? Close quote. This was the era in which humankind took back its own agency, believing that every person possessed the power to think, doubt, and create. The Great Manifestos, the American Declaration of Independence, 1776, and the French Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen, 1789, were the living expressions of this spirit. 4. American and French Revolutions. When ideas became action. Open quote, the American Revolution and the French Revolution brought freedom. Close quote. From philosophy came revolutionary action. In North America, the colonies broke away from Britain and declared that all men are created equal. This was the American Revolution, 1775-1783, the dawn of the modern democratic world. Soon after, the French Revolution, 1789, erupted in Europe, toppling monarchy and birthing a new age where liberty, equality, fraternity became humanity's shared dream. Yet, alongside this light of freedom came the shadow of violence, guillotines, civil wars, and terror. It was a grim reminder that freedom is sacred, but it demands responsibility and sacrifice. 5. The Industrial Revolution, the power of machines. Open quote, the Industrial Revolution brought machines, and with them, cities covered in smoke. Close quote. In the mid-18th century, steam engines, textile mills, and mechanized factories emerged in Britain. This was the Industrial Revolution, which transformed farmers into factory workers, villages into cities, and human hands into machinery. In just a few generations, the world changed beyond recognition. Production accelerated beyond imagination. Goods flooded global markets. Railways, steamships, and telegraphs connected humanity like never before. But the cost was staggering. Children worked 12-hour shifts, pollution choked the skies, and the gap between the rich and the poor widened into a chasm. The cities covered in smoke were not only industrial landscapes, they symbolized the growing imbalance between progress and humanity. 6. The human paradox, conquering nature, failing ourselves. Open quote, amid the roar of engines, humanity realized we had conquered nature, but not ourselves. Close quote. This final line is a profound philosophical declaration. After millennia of evolution, humanity could now command rivers, cross oceans, fly through the skies, and even reach for the stars. And yet, we remained prisoners of greed, fear, and conflict. This is the central paradox of the age of revolutions. We mastered nature, but not our emotions. We built intelligent machines, but allowed them to enslave us. We spoke of liberty, yet constructed prisons of our own making. As Rousseau warned, open quote, man is born free, and everywhere he is in chains, close quote. The line reverberates through this era, a warning that material progress cannot replace moral growth. 7. The art of storytelling, the heartbeat of revolution. Chapter 6's narration follows a rhythm that mirrors the pulse of an accelerating civilization. Short, powerful phrases deliver impact. Gunpowder, printing press, telescope, revolution, freedom, machines. Each like a heartbeat, rapid, insistent, alive. The tone evolves from awe at invention to admiration of reason, then to reflection on consequences. It ends on a meditative note. We conquered nature, but not ourselves. Visually, this could be portrayed as a transition from bright enlightenment to industrial gray, with sounds of printing presses and engines fading into the slow rhythm of a heartbeat, symbolizing the limits of progress. 8. Philosophical and psychological dimensions. Humanism. Humanity as the center of meaning, capable of shaping its destiny. Rationalism. Reason as the light that frees humankind from superstition and fear. Early psychoanalysis. By the late 19th century, Freud turned inward, exploring the mind, a natural counterbalance to centuries spent conquering the external world. Thus, the Age of Revolutions was not only about cannons, factories, and manifestos. It was also a revolution of the soul, where humankind began to search within for understanding. 9. Conclusion. The echo of the engine. The chapter closes in the sound of machines, the anthem of modernity. It is the sound of triumph, yet also of alienation. open quote, "We conquered nature, but not ourselves," close quote. This line does more than end a chapter. It opens a question that echoes through all of history. If power has lifted us to such heights, what will keep us from falling into the abyss of our own ambition? The Age of Revolutions, then, stands as a double-edged epoch. One side shining with the light of knowledge, the other cloaked in the darkness of human desire. And in that tension between light and shadow, humanity keeps moving forward. Heartbeat by heartbeat, engine by engine, still searching for the true meaning of freedom. Chapter 7, War and Peace, minute 52 to 57. The 20th century, the most glorious yet the most brutal era in human history. 2 world wars shattered the illusion of progress. Empires that had stood for centuries crumbled overnight. From the ashes of Europe rose a new world order, one built on fear, ideology, and the race for dominance. Mushroom clouds tore open the sky above Hiroshima and Nagasaki, reminding humankind of its own terrifying power. For the first time, we possessed the ability not just to shape history, but to end it entirely. And yet, amid the rubble, hope persisted. The United Nations was born, a fragile promise of peace between former enemies. The Cold War divided the globe into East and West, 2 ideologies staring each other down behind nuclear arsenals. From the Berlin Wall to the jungles of Vietnam, from the Cuban Missile Crisis to the space race, the world lived under the shadow of annihilation, but also dreamed higher than ever before. Then in 1969, a human footprint marked the moon. It was more than a triumph of technology. It was the symbol of humanity's eternal will to explore. As Neil Armstrong whispered, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." The planet watched together, billions of hearts beating in unison, for the first time truly connected by television, by wonder, by shared existence. But even as we reached the stars, our feet remained tangled in the mud of the earth. Colonial empires disintegrated, and new nations rose from their remains. Freedom movements swept across Asia, Africa, and Latin America, people demanding self-determination after centuries of oppression. Some succeeded, others traded one master for another. The second half of the century was an age of contradictions. The information age dawned. Computers shrank from room-sized machines to devices that fit in our palms. The internet emerged, promising a borderless world of ideas and communication, but with every connection came new divisions. Technology united continents, yet split communities. It gave voice to the voiceless and also power to misinformation, greed, and fear. Humanity stood at a crossroads. We had conquered disease, decoded DNA, split the atom, and digitized knowledge, but we had not conquered the darkness within ourselves. Racism, nationalism, extremism, old demons wearing new masks. Still, the century that began with war ended with whispers of peace. The Berlin Wall fell. The Cold War ended without a nuclear firestorm. For a moment, it seemed that history itself had taken a deep breath, that perhaps, after all the suffering, humanity might finally learn to live together. And yet, as the millennium turned, the same fragile thread connected us all, a glowing strand of fiber optics carrying both wisdom and chaos. Our history had become truly global and just as fragile as light. The story of the 20th century is not merely a chronicle of war and peace, but a mirror of what it means to be human, to create and destroy, to dream and despair, to reach for the stars while stumbling through the darkness. It taught us that progress is not guaranteed, that peace must be protected every day, and that even in our greatest achievements, we remain, as ever, a species learning how to live with itself. Chapter 8, Our Future, minutes 57 to 60. Expanded analysis, 1,000 words. So what about the future? A simple question, yet it carries the eternal uncertainty of humankind. Because while we stand at the peak of knowledge, we also stand on the edge of our own creation. Over 300,000 years since the first humans lifted a stone as a tool, we are now rewriting the very code of life. DNA, once the divine mystery of existence, has become a language that humans can read, edit, and even recreate. With CRISPR technology, we can erase genetic diseases, extend life, and perhaps one day create entirely new forms of life. But as we begin to redefine what nature means, the line between creation and arrogance grows perilously thin. We are entering the age of artificial intelligence, beings that do not eat, do not tire, and learn faster than any brain ever could. AI can now compose music, paint art, diagnose illness, drive cars, and even write stories about itself. Is this the next stage of human evolution, our digital descendants? Or is it merely a mirror reflecting our deepest desire to become creators ourselves, just as the gods once made us? As thinking machines begin to understand human language, emotion, and decision-making, we must ask, what truly makes us human? Is it consciousness, compassion, or simply a complex algorithm shaped by evolution? Meanwhile, humanity turns its eyes toward the stars. Mars, Europa, Titan, names once spoken only in myth, are now the destinations of silver vessels bearing the flag of Earth. Who are we has transformed into where do we go next? Humans are no longer bound to this planet. We are becoming an interplanetary species, sowing the seeds of life across cold, distant worlds. And yet, as we look to the heavens, our feet remain on a warming Earth. Ice melts, forests burn, seas rise. The planet's warning cannot be ignored. For the first time in history, humanity itself is the greatest threat to its own survival. We have created magnificent civilizations, but also a new geological epoch, the Anthropocene, where our fingerprints are etched into every layer of rock and ocean floor. Amidst our progress, the oldest questions still echo. Where did we come from? What are we here for? And if we could live forever, would we still be human? Perhaps the future is not a destination, but a mirror reflecting the past. Every invention, no matter how revolutionary, is but another version of the flame our ancestors once kindled in a dark cave. That same fire keeps us alive, but unchecked. It can also burn everything we've built. We now live in a world overflowing with data, information, and instant connection. We can speak to someone on the other side of the planet, yet struggle to truly hear the person beside us. In an age of infinite knowledge, we risk losing ancient wisdom, the kind once passed through stories, rituals, and faith. And yet, it is within this contradiction that our true nature shines through. Humans are never satisfied with the present. From caves to cities, from fire to nuclear power, from horses to starships, we keep moving forward, sometimes guided by reason, sometimes by illusion, but always by the desire to dream. That, perhaps, is what makes us truly human. Not strength, not intelligence, but the ability to dream and to believe that our dreams can become real. Music rises, blending hope and nostalgia. I am the sleepless historian, and this is our story. The story of species that never stopped dreaming. From the ashes of the past, we forge the future. From our mistakes, we learn to love. And when we gaze upon the stars, we understand that history never ends. It is still being written every day by us. Conclusion. Chapter 8, Our Future, is not just the ending of a film. It is a call to awareness. It reminds us that every breakthrough, whether technological, scientific, or philosophical, circles back to one profound question. What will humanity become once it can do anything? History has never been a story of the past. It is the mirror of the future, reflecting our fears, hopes, and dreams, the dreams of a fragile, curious creature that dares to reach for the stars.